2.7 is a little bit harder, so it's important that you actually watch this video and try the things I'm telling you to try. It's about transformations. So we start with a parent function. Let's say y equals absolute value of x. This is called a parent function because it is the easiest function of absolute value. It's easy. Y equals absolute value of x. Let's go ahead and plug that in our calculators. And I really want you to get out your calculator as well and try this so that you know how I'm doing this while I'm doing it. So take a second to do that, or pause this video. Then press y equals, and let's type in absolute value of x. To get absolute value, you need to press this button that says math right here. So math, scroll over to absolute, ABS, and let's put in that x. Let's grab it. So this is the absolute value of y equals absolute value of x. It's really simple. And the thing is, we can make this a little bit harder. So now that we have y equals absolute value of x, transformations are all about this. Y equals a times the absolute value of x minus h plus k. And this looks very confusing, but all it does is add three numbers. Three numbers are possible. We can add a number outside the absolute value, we can add a number inside the absolute value, and we can add a number here as well. So this number is being multiplied, like distributed. This one's being subtracted or added. This one's being added or subtracted again. But let's just focus on let's just focus on one of these three possible numbers for now. Let's just focus on one of them. So let's focus on this number right outside here. So let's try this function. Y equals 2 times the absolute value of x. So it's the same as the parent function. Just added a 2 outside. So let's put that on our calculator. So y equals 2 times the absolute value of x. Let's see what happens. Okay, we get the absolute value of x. It's just a little bit steeper this time. So let's make a note of that. Let's try another one. Let's do y equals 4 times the absolute value of x. Put that on our calculator. Y equals 4 times the absolute value of x. And it's even steeper. Okay. Let's try using a fraction this time. See what happens. Let me delete some of this material. Let's try a fraction. Okay, so y equals 1/4 times the absolute value of x. Remember, this is just, in this equation, y equals a times x minus h plus k. This is just adding a different a out front. So let's try that. Y equals 1/4. Remember, when I put in a fraction, I always put in parentheses. 1/4. That way the calculator knows I want a fraction, not just division. So fraction times the absolute value of x. So you can see this one that just got added right here is is not steep, it's the opposite. So this one's wider, or less steep, however you want to say it. Okay. So what this means is, in this parent function, if we add a number out front, if we add a number like 1/4 times that or 2 times that, it's going to change how steep the graph looks. If we increase the number, it becomes steeper. If we decrease the number by going into fractions, it becomes wider. What happens if we put a negative sign out front? Let's try that. Haven't tried this yet. I'm kind of interested to see what will happen. So y equals negative 2, for example, times the absolute value of x. It'll just flip it around. So a negative sign out front, y equals negative 2 times the absolute value of x, will flip it. Flip. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Remember, the parent function is y equals the square the absolute value of x, but we can transform it. We can transform this by doing anything to it like this. Y equals a times x minus h plus k. And we previously looked at what happens if we put an a here. That's going to change the steepness. Let's focus on this part in the middle. So let's try this. Let's try y equals x minus 2. Well, let's keep the absolute value of x, just the normal one, just to make sure that we remember what it was. Okay, that's absolute value of x. Let's try y equals the absolute value of x minus 2. See what happens. Okay, it looks like it just shifted it to the right. Okay, shifted it to the right. To the right. 2. And that's really interesting because we put negative 2. So you would think that you'd move to the left, but actually when you put a negative, this one's opposite. So this one in the middle is opposite. If it's negative, it goes to the right. Let's try adding 2. So y equals, of course, math, absolute value. Y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. And it moves it to the left, 2. To the left, 2. So adding 2 actually moves it to the left. Subtracting 2 moves it to the right. And this one's opposite. This is the only one of the three that's opposite, is this part in the middle. That's something you have to remember. If it says subtraction, it's moving it to the right. If it says addition, it's moving it to the left. Okay, we have one more thing to try, and let's focus on this adding a number outside the absolute value sign, so this plus k. So we know what y equals absolute value of x looks like. It's the one in the middle. Let's try y equals the absolute value of x plus 3. Y equals the absolute value of x plus 3. And notice it's very important that I close the parentheses on that x before I add the 3. Otherwise, if I don't close the parentheses, I'm actually adding to the middle here, and that's not what you want at all. So be very, very careful to close the parentheses and add 3 if that's actually what the problem wants. Alright, so y equals absolute value of x plus 3. It's like adding a y-intercept to this equation, okay? It's like adding a plus 3, a y-intercept of positive 3. So let's try another one. Let's do y equals the absolute value of x, close it, minus 3. We should expect this to have a y-intercept of negative 3, and it does. It moves it down 3. So y equals absolute value of x minus 3. It moves that equation down 3. Okay, so now that you know all the parts of this, you know what each part of this transformation does, let's try a hard one. Let's add something to each part and try to predict what's going to happen. So we'll just make something up. So y equals negative 1/2 times absolute value of x plus 2 minus 3. So what do you think this is going to do? Well, I see the 1/2 in front. That means it's not going to be as steep. It's going to be wider. There's a negative sign here, which means that it's going to flip the graph upside down. Okay, so it's wider than absolute value of x. It's going to be flipped upside down because that's a negative outside. X plus 2, meaning it's shifted to the left 2. And minus 3, that means it's going to go down 3. Let's see if we got this right. So we have we have negative 1/2 times the absolute value of x plus 2. Remember, that's inside the parentheses right here. X plus 2, close parentheses, minus 3. Let's graph. So yeah, it's wider, it's flipped, it's to the left 2, and it's down 3.